All right, now we're going to get into the meat of the AI question with Melody and Yves. Let me just take a minute to read you a little bit about their backgrounds because we have some incredible experience on stage. Melody Hildebrandt, welcome.
Thank you.
Melody is the Chief Technology Officer for Fox Corporation, where she sets the comprehensive tech strategy for the company. She previously served as the Chief Information Security Officer and the President of its research and development subsidiary, Blockchain Creative Labs. In her current role, Melody leads the development, design, and implementation of emerging technologies across the Fox enterprise, including Fox Sports, Fox News, Fox Entertainment, Fox television stations, and Tubi. Her current focus is on future planning, including developments in AI and authenticating and monetizing premium content via blockchain technology. She also continues to oversee the cybersecurity posture of the business and leads tech M&A efforts. So, she's a brain. Okay. Yves Bergquist, who has helped guide some of the programming of this conference because he's so in the middle of AI, is the Director of AI and Neuroscience and Media at USC's Entertainment Technology Center. Yves is an AI researcher, a member of the Generative AI Working Group at the Academy, and for the past 9 years has been the director of the AI in Media project at USC's Entertainment Technology Center, which is a think tank and a research center funded by all the Hollywood studios, as well as large technology companies such as Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Dolby. At the center, Yves and his team use frontier AI methods to help media companies understand the DNA behind narrative structures, audience emotion, and content performance. He is also the co-founder and CEO of Cordo, an AI startup, building software products to help studios, brands, and advertisers use AI in their content and audience development strategies. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So we have a lot to talk about. Melody, you were here for in the audience listening to the last conversation. I think there was something that you wanted to respond to about, or maybe in the first conversation about AI and distribution opportunities, which was really going to be my first question, which is, how would you describe where the focus of Fox, and since you're in touch with other Hollywood studios, where the other studios are focused as regards AI right now?
Yeah, I thought that was such a powerhouse of an opening session, hearing from those two speakers.
Thanks.
And I think they really spoke about both the sense of transformation and opportunity, but also obviously some of the headwinds that the industry is facing. So when I really think about AI applications, I really do think about this offensively and defensively. So, offensively, how can we think about differentiating our programming, differentiating the way we distribute our programming? How can we actually cut through the noise and allow our content to thrive and for people to choose to watch our content instead of watching content not just on Warner Bros. Discovery or NBC or traditional competitors set, or Netflix, even the most recent emerging competitive set, but as you were alluding to, TikTok, and actually where most of the eyeballs are going today. So I think there's this real opportunity for studios to think about embracing these technologies offensively to differentiate and allow their programming to shine. And then we also have to think a little bit defensively as well. I mean, again, we know that big tech are harnessing these technologies without abandon. I mean, there is extreme aggressive adoption, and a lot of the technologies are built on the back of our content, like the actual underlying models that are being used to create these new content types have been trained on our content without our compensation or our participation. And so I think for us right now, the moment is really how can we help forge an optimistic future where Hollywood actually participates in the upside of this technology revolution, and we're not just kind of allowing ourselves to be the inputs to the monetization and the exploitation of our content by big tech, who are going to become
So you think of big tech as like the enemy? In a way?
Kind of a frenemy, I'd say, because I'm very optimistic about the adoption of these technologies. I mean, I spend over 9/10 of my time working on AI.
You are a computer engineer yourself, right?
Yeah, so I come from an engineering background. There's no more exciting time to be a technologist in media, I think. The explosion of these technologies,
right,
I think can really be incredible. I mean, and can really solve some major problems for the industry. But I think particularly around what again, the opening speaker spoke about, which is about content discovery. How do you actually find content in this current world? How do you allow audiences to connect to the content that they really want to find, they really want to see? How the to be line here is like, how do you let people go down that rabbit hole? So there's incredible opportunity, but I think we really need to think of ourselves as peers to big tech in the exploitation of it. There's a real risk where, again, we just become the inputs. And I think we've kind of been through this rodeo before a little bit with technology, where we take a short-term view, and we really need to take a long-term view and participate as equity holders through the exploitation of the technology in a fair way with the right guardrails around our content.
So how do you do that?
I think part of it is, one, I think we should be embracing the utilization of the technologies ourselves and experimenting, and I'm happy to get into the stuff that we've put into production in real life that I think actually allows us to be competitive and increase our storytelling, increase our packaging of content, increase our employee productivity and their capabilities. So I think there's that offensive, like we should be out there using these technologies. And I think there's the defensive part of this, which is how do we relate to big tech, to AI model companies? I think there's obviously licensing opportunities that we're seeing studios put forward. There's potentially real opportunity there, but I think we need to make sure that we're equity holders in that, that we ensure that there's like a new norm that should be established around how models are built and trained on content. I mean, if we actually want a flourishing ecosystem of content creation, of diverse storytelling in the future, I think we really need to kind of embrace the idea that the content creators should be participated for their inputs, their contributions to the models that then allow these amazing downstream applications. So I think that's where I think there's a real opportunity for Hollywood to kind of band together in terms of establishing these new norms. What should licensing look like, where we're equity holders, where there's guardrails around that, how that content is used, and we don't allow big tech to actually just impose their framework
This does
upon
not
us.
exist yet. This is sort of a framework for thinking about it, but it doesn't quite exist yet.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of emerging work, and Yves involved in a lot of this as well, which is I think the studios are collaborating right now on this. We're having such good conversations amongst each other about how do we want to engage with AI companies? What are the things we care about, and that we need to actually preserve? But it's definitely work in progress and super early days. And I think, again, we have to kind of continue to hold firm a little bit and not take too short-sighted a view.
Mm-hmm. So Yves, you are really kind of at the center of this fulcrum of the various studios probably looking to create a strategy, or is it a united strategy around AI? Where do you see the focus, practically speaking, of the studios right now as regards AI?
Lots of AI application and experimentation in the boring but really expensive stuff.
The boring, is that what you said?
Well, yeah, rotoscoping, right? You're not going to write a lot about rotoscoping.
Not unless you tell me what it is.
A lot of production, a lot of expensive production, post-production processes are, the target of sort of a lot of AI models and a lot of experimentation in the studio system. De-aging, re-aging. All the CTOs of the studios sit on the ETC board, and one of them was saying there's not a single frame that we put out that hasn't been touched by AI.
Today?
Yes, in one way or another.
Say that one more time, because
There isn't a single shot that this studio was putting out that hasn't been touched by AI in one way or another. Just.
You're nodding, that's true? That's a surprise to me.
QA, QC, rotoscoping, de-aging, re-aging, upscaling of images. There's just an enormous portion of the content creation process that's just pure manufacturing.
Okay.
And there's a lot of opportunity to automate. Dozens of times a month I hear someone say, this shot was going to cost $1 million and cost $100,000 because we applied, generative AI to do it, right? And it took 2 weeks instead of 6 months.
Is there one AI software company that Hollywood is
it's funny.
Defaulting to?
The most successful AI companies in Hollywood are the ones that were created by production, post-production people. The pure play Silicon Valley people come down here and talk to
Like startups.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and talk to studios in a way that studios don't like very much, right? So like, let me show you how we're doing, and let me show you how you do your job, or hey, if you send us all your content, we can work on it. And the studios are like, you're insane, you're out of your mind, right? So there's a huge cultural shift, but there's a ton of small AI companies that you've never heard of that are really making a lot of progress in helping the studios transition
Feel free to name them if you think they're important.
like Topaz Lab, right? They're not even based here, they're based in Dallas. Probably the best upscaling solution in the world. Just tons of, below the sort of the big sort of runway, stability, AI kind of big
Melody,
name.
shouldn't you be buying companies like that?
Well, it does get to a question like, what's your thesis on where AI today can give the most value, right? And I think for us, at least, like we're not the studio that Yves was referring to there. I think for us, I think we've seen more of an opportunity today to think about, we already are spending so much time and effort to put together, studio programming on, 3, 4, 5 cable channels, 24/7 hours a day. We're producing and we have talent, and we stand behind the takes of our talent. That's why we hire them. So I think a lot of the opportunity here for us, I think, is to think about how can we allow all these investments to actually cut through and be distributed and have much bigger reach than they do today. I think the opening speakers, they're going to talk about the secular decline of cable, the changing viewer behaviors away from linear programming, let's say, which has been historically Fox's bread and butter. But we think we have the best-in-class commentary across sports, news, entertainment. We want to, how can we reach younger viewers? And I think that's where AI and the models are absolutely incredible, like reasoning across video data to be able to custom create clips to reach that younger viewer who might not be watching FS1 all day, but really wants to follow Caitlin Clark. And we actually have had throughout the day, we've had incredible snippets that either are showing her live, takes on her game, how she's doing now that she's entered the WNBA. We can package that up and deliver that to a new consumer that we otherwise couldn't have reached. So I think I'm much more bullish, and a lot of our focus right now is really more on that curation step. How can we allow discovery of content, repackaging of content, as opposed to, I think what Yves referring to is some of the very exciting stuff that's very fun to play with, and I think initially it really captured the imagination of Hollywood, vubbing, this term?
Yeah,
voice dubbing.
Yeah.
Or de-aging, or digital doubles, but I think at least our take right now is that's not super aligned to our creative ethos, or where we see the kind
strengths.
of programming that we're trying to create. And so, we have a lot of editorial commentary and a lot of live programming, and
So
we
you're
want to
focused on
reach
that.
younger viewers. We want to reach a broader set of viewers who aren't cable viewers, and to reach them where they are. I think this is where the models can really allow us to package that content, cut and slice it in ways that's much more efficient, and deliver that out.
Fascinating. Okay,
I gotta-
feel like
I gotta say,
I interrupted you, so I wanted you to go back. So you were talking about the focus on production, which is obviously maybe not Fox, but some of the other studios. Yeah, continue, please.
I got to say, I'm really happy that Melody's here, because Fox is really, and Melody's team are very unique in just being probably one of the most aggressive, sophisticated users of AI, not just in the sort of the sausage factory of making content, but also leveraging it to create new experiences for the consumer, which I think is super exciting. There's also a lot of very, very exciting experimentation in just the creative community. We have tons of relationships with independent filmmakers, and generative AI is an amazing tool for directors, for example, to communicate their vision, their creative vision, to their teams, to their investors, to prototype shots. Think about it, right? You have a tool that allows directors to prototype shots. That's amazing, right? And so you have tons and tons of directors that are just completely falling in love with AI right now. But I would say the technology is still very, very early, very experimental, extremely expensive, horribly expensive, and just full of lots of hype. This industry is really where I think AI is seen with the most health. for two reasons. Why?
The most health?
Yeah, the
Meaning
most
that
healthy,
people
the
have
most
a healthy
way.
attitude?
Yeah, most healthy attitude. One is because the media industry is very much a technology industry. And two, the media industry is actually the only industry that has been successful at integrating technology and human creativity. And this industry is nothing but that. There's done nothing else but that for over 100 years. And so I think, and it's also not a maker of AI, it's a consumer of AI. So it has a very, very healthy, relationship with it as a consumer, not a hype peddler, if you will. But tons of bottlenecks in large organizations, right? It's a very disruptive technology for large organizations. I mean, it's very expensive, very experimental, so it's very hard for CFOs to say, hey, here's $10 million, maybe give me something, right? But still a lot of appetite for experimentation.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be argumentative, but if you're telling me that you're seeing a shot that you're hearing from people commonly saying that shot would have cost $1 million and it cost $100,000, I don't know how expensive the AI is, but it sounds like that's a great return on an investment if you're a studio or a producer.
It is. It's very
movie.
difficult to build a whole integrated workflow because you have a lot of different tools and different models, and you end up having post-production executives, sort of their post-production teams having to go in and out of models and stitch together a bunch of models with existing tools like Avid and Adobe and stuff like that. And it's just so that $100,000 shot may take 2,000 prompts to get right.
Right.
There's still very little control and consistency between different shots.
So that's the expense. That's time.
It's time. It's very, very early. It's definitely not magic. It's blood, sweat, and tears. It's very, very hard. I mean, we have here two people on the stage that build this stuff, and it's just like you want to kill yourself sometimes. It's very, very difficult. And large organizations, including studios, it's not just the media industry, everywhere, have really a lot of trouble approaching it, understanding it, talking about it. And so there's a big effort to educate the community right now, which is what ETC is really focused on. We're building a course on AI for media executives. The biggest opportunity in AI right now is education and building user interfaces that actually, where the model can get distilled to the user in a way that the user understands, right? So education and that sort of interface between models and people.
Yeah. Let's talk about the big fear that was most of what we talked about, I think last year in the first 12 months when AI came in, which is about AI basically replacing people and jobs in the industry. So I think we all understand that it can enhance creativity, it will enhance productivity. From a practical perspective, what are we looking at? It Melanie doesn't sound like that's where you're necessarily focused, but Yves, do you have a view on how that impacts jobs across over time, and probably not even that much time?
Right. So the impact over jobs is sort of a question mark, because in the way that the models are today, what the impact is on tasks, not jobs. So we have to look at tasks. So it's not yet automating jobs. It is really automating tasks. And you're seeing a new sort of class of people emerge in Hollywood that is really, really interesting, called sort of AI creatives or AI producers. That are the people in a production that are in charge of implementing AI models and tools across the production pipeline. Right. So that's actually a new job in Hollywood. There's, as I said, a lot of tasks, automation, no job automation yet. I think it's too early. I mean, there's the whole like doom and gloom on AI, I think, is a little bit too early. The models aren't there yet. The organizations aren't there yet. I mean, there's so much that needs to be built. There's so many different cultures that need to be changed. And, it's definitely a possibility, but I think it's really, really too early to talk about it. And I'm a little bit sick and tired of this sort of like big, broad philosophical, like, in 25 years, like when, everything gets automated, AGI, all this stuff. No, let's talk about today. Let's talk about today. What do we do today? So what do we do this week? What do we do this month? Like, let's it's a complete waste of time to sort of speculate about where models and AI is going to be in 20 years. We actually don't know, right? We know what it is today. We know what it is this week. We know what it is this month. Let's educate the community. Let's bring everybody up into it. Let's show them the benefits. Let's retrain those that need to be retrained. Let's figure out how we build sort of apprenticeships, for example, and stuff like that. That's the stuff that's why we're super excited to be a part of the community, but also we're at the School of Cinematic Arts at USC, which is the #1 film school in the world. We spend so much time thinking about how do we create these new skills and how do we allow the community to use them in a way that's meaningful, that they can really sustain their careers and empower their creative spirit.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree on the task point, automating of tasks. I mean, we for example, have, we do some high-level strategic projects, but we also just have kind of a platform we've opened up to employees to create, GPTs or, their own apps. And I think it's been kind of amazing to see. I've getting these demos now of employees who've been like, hey, I've actually automated my day. Like what used to take me 8 hours, I now can do in 1 hour, because I was a scheduling associate and my job was to make sure metadata was consistent across these 20 different systems for synchronization and delivery. I've created a custom GPT that automates all that. Now I can spend time as a data scientist because that's what I really want to do, and they're helping to power some of our AI sports insights. So yeah, they automated away a task, but that then gave them the leverage to now work on this opportunity, which, I kind of have talked a lot about how using AI for kind of curation, let's say, but I do think AI in creation is interesting, particularly just around enhancing storytelling. And for us, it's like maybe there's like a data edge, and in sports, obviously a huge sports business, we think there's a real edge to tell around when you're watching programming, how can you better contextualize what's happening, that uncertainty that what we heard about earlier that makes those moments so exciting. How can you contextualize that for a fan? Like I was looking at our AI app this weekend. You see it pop up on Fox Sports. If anyone's like a Dodgers and Padres fan. And one of these AI insights that our team created that popped up was, hey, they're down, the Dodgers are now down 4-0 against, the Padres. Like historically, they only have a 45% chance that they've ever hit over 3 runs against this killer pitcher. They're gonna have to outperform today if they're gonna come back, right? Like that's a story that now we can seed to it, that goes live into the broadcast booth. Our broadcaster sends on air, a graphic goes in real time onto the ticker that you see there, and that's allowing us to differentiate our storytelling, and we think that makes the game more compelling to watch on Fox than it might be somewhere else. So again,
I'm not sure anybody would realize that that's AI driven.
Yeah. And that might be the point sometimes, right? Like it is some of these, sometimes it does get to what is the operation? What is the creative team doing all day? That, we work with Fox Sports Production, they're always looking for the edge in their storytelling. How can we better contextualize this game for the audience so they know the stakes, so they know what needs to happen, so they know where actually the tension is, right? So that's what the group is all about. And so we're thinking about how can we enhance that. We're not looking to revolutionize that. It's enhancing our production leads on Fox Sports, they're the best in class at telling those stories, and now we can equip them with all this new tooling. And again, it can be a little behind the scenes, and it's a little more brass tacks. It's not vubbing, it's not quite as sexy, but it is, it differentiates us, and it is actually what makes a difference for our business to drive viewership, to drive engagement, and those are the metrics that we actually look at.
Talk a little bit about what you've alluded to in that, this notion that the studios need to work together on either creating tools or their own technology so that they can approach a conversation with big tech as peers rather than as, I'll say, supplicants or, concubines. I don't know. I always think of starter wives. I don't know. I've come to think about content creators as kind of that, in the sort of dynamic of where we've gotten to, sort of starting with, I don't really mean to come up with sort of male-female, dualities, but, we used to, when I first came to Hollywood, it was content is king, that's a very, dominant thing, and I don't know that we feel that that's the case anymore. Sometimes I feel okay, well, it's kind of like this, content is the second wife. So, so it sounds like your approach is, we have to be able to own this ourselves to some degree.
Yep.
So could you just talk a little about that and then how what you're actually doing?
Yeah, content is king. I think that's where the studios have to realize where we have leverage, and we should assert that leverage. And I think we have to recognize what the AI companies are doing. And so they're not just taking our content to train models for generative purposes, they are scraping our content in real time, repackaging it, remonetizing it, again, without any of our participation or consent. So I think there is, I describe this a little bit like we're in Napster era right now, right? And we need to get to Spotify, or like we need to get to Apple Music, right? Where all the parties are actually participating in this ecosystem.
Should I mention that Spotify has not made a profit yet since it's been created, but okay.
And we can improve upon that model.
Yeah, okay.
So there's. I think it's set a little of the guardrails to show it changed the norms. No one's really downloading music over Tor anymore, right? Like they've changed the norms.
That's
like
right.
here are actually the paths. And I think so. The first statement we made was, well, if you're taking our content illegally, as we would say, then we need to actually provide the paved path that says, okay, there's an alternative to you scraping it. And it is this. And we released an open source project called Verify, which is that kind of endpoint, which is us asserting digital ownership of all of our content. So as anything gets published on any of our websites or apps or anything, we are cryptographically signing it, saying this is our content. It now lives on this, and this endpoint. And so if you want this content for training, if you want to build a rad new AI podcast app that, aggregates a bunch of news sources, great, talk to us, that's a business opportunity. You can't scrape our content and use it in your app, but hey, we actually have a mechanism for you to take this content that, by the way, similar to kind of the Napster analogy, doesn't have malware or, all these bad things around randomly scraping content off the internet. Mm-hmm. To actually say, here's the legal mechanism for you to engage with our content. And we're excited about these new distribution opportunities, potentially, but that's actually a business conversation. You don't have the right to take it without talking to us. So I think that's kind of the first step, is that we have to, as an industry, kind of show what the paved path is to say, okay, the current state is bad. We want to move to a new state, and here's actually a mechanism to license content. And then here's where I can actually provide some guardrails around the use of that content. And I think the guardrails matter a lot to us. So, I mean, if you're kind of I work, for example, have a big animation studio, right? If we were, if we think about kind of the underlying intellectual property that creates a Bob's Burgers or a Crepopolis, there's the process to make animation, but there's also, we don't want Crepopolis Prime or something, right, to be created off the back of our content, right? So I think there's all these guardrails that we need to be able to enforce upon our content to ensure that we don't kind of lose out on all those downstream uses of it, and we care about the outputs that are used back on the back of our content. So I think that's for us is kind of the industry call, which is we think we as an industry should assert our ownership of content. We should recognize we have leverage, particularly on video data. The AI companies are desperate for video data. They want to create these new AI video models. They've taken the internet. So there's all these kind of private repos of data that they want access to. We should recognize we have leverage. And we should enforce some guardrails, and we should have some economic participation. I think those are kind of like the key things for me as an industry for us to be able to flourish kind of in this new era. And again, not take either a short-term check and maybe lose all the downstream control that I think has burned us in the past.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree, Yves, that is the view that other major studios that's sort of where they're positioning themselves at the moment? I think a company like Disney, which just has, Fox is relatively young compared to a company like Disney, which has 100 years of content and a half a dozen brands, many levels deep, and that's a lot of IP to protect.
Well, it is a lot, but it's not enough to train a very comprehensive model, believe it or not. Individually, the studios have some ability to train some models, but to be able to be very, very comprehensive, those models need just enormous amounts of data. And the Disney data is very biased towards Disney-type content, right? So Melody's right when she talks about all the studios coming together, and ETC is the place when they're doing that, right? Coming together and talking about all this stuff, talking about how to make it feasible, right, and to have a unified front around it. A lot of talk about, AI ethics, and in the most popular conversations among the studio people that we talk to are about AI ethics. And so we're developing
In what sense? Be more specific.
A unified industry response regarding deepfakes, unified industry response regarding, how do you actually implement AI ethics in organizations, right? The Entertainment Technology Center was created by George Lucas in 1993 to essentially bring all the studios together to create sort of industry-wide solutions and practices and guidelines. So there's some aspect of competition. There's still a lot of competition between the studios, but there are things that nobody, like every single studio needs. That it's not competitive. That they don't need to, they don't need to build individually. So ETC then will build that. One of the things that we're doing is essentially creating a sort of a big rule book, guidelines, rule of the roads about AI ethics and how do you implement AI ethics in studios, and who is accountable and how do you do it, and how do you grow your team, and who do you hire, and
do you expect that'll be adopted? That's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah,
Sort of a code of AI ethics in entertainment.
Yeah, it probably will be adopted at some point next year.
Nothing like a set of common frenemies to bring us together.
Well,
you know?
yeah. I mean,
They're all friends. I mean, they're all worked. I mean, it's like 300 people.
Oh, we're friends. Again, I'm saying we have a common frenemy.
Yes, exactly.
why we
Yes,
need to have-
yes.
Who's your biggest frenemy?
Oh, well.
I mean, Meta just announced
It,
they have a new video tool that they're rolling out.
Yeah, what Meta's doing
kind
is
of like
pretty
Sora.
incredible, actually. I mean, and that's a case where it's open source technology that makes us a little more bullish to work on it, versus kind of some of the more proprietary models. Yeah, maybe certain companies that are going through a little bit of upheaval recently, you might put on the list.
Okay, OpenAI.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of them.
I
that
said
we
it,
can
you
go
don't have
through,
to, but
honestly,
yeah. And what's your biggest concern about?
Well, again, I think there's this opportunity, and we leverage that technology internally as well, right? So there's a kind of two sides to all this, which is, how can we leverage the technology, but then how are those models trained moving forward? And, how can we have this kind of more equal relationship on exploiting the fruits of those models moving forward? And so I think there's a real opportunity, actually, and I think the things are moving totally in a positive direction. And there's a little bit of kind of selling of indulgences. I mean, back to some of your other analogies.
What do you
mean? There's things have been done in the past that we can't really unwind. You can't really undo the sausage of GPT-4. It kind of that existed. Things happened, right? But how do we think about together as an industry that wants to be AI optimistic, that wants to partner with technology? How can we chart? What does GPT-5 look like? What is it trained on? And that's the kind of conversations I think we can have now, which kind of acknowledge that, again, we went through our Napster era, but we're now kind of charting a new era that's more collaborative.
So if you could, I totally understand when you say, Yves, that you can't take a 25-year view because it's impossible. But if you could look, say, 12 months to 48 months out, kind of where do you think we'll be in terms of, well, across the board, in terms of AI implementation and relationships with the big tech companies that they're just getting loads of more money every day I wake up, there's some other $500 million getting funded into some AI. So that is where all of the capital.
Yeah. Well, let's zoom out a little bit, because the biggest disruptor in entertainment is not technology right now; it's the market, right? And so the future, as we're seeing it in ETC, is 3 tiers of creatives, right? The upper tier, the studio tier, is immersive, personalized, multi-platform entertainment. You spend your life in Star Wars across, gaming, linear, TV, theatrical. It's all personalized. That capability to create sort of integrated, it's all based on Unreal Engine, by the way. Unreal Fest was in Seattle.
Based on what?
Unreal Engine. So the operating system for the entertainment industry moving forward is going to be Unreal Engine, Epic Games, and NVIDIA, right? So immersive multi-platform entertainment at the studio level. AR, VR, very much a thing. Blockchain, very much a thing. AI, very much a thing, right? In terms of generating assets, procedural assets, and reusing them across linear, virtual production, and gaming. Then you have a second tier of production companies, developing their own AI their own IP using AI, right? So you're seeing a lot of the VFX companies right now, which have been going through a lot of pain, sort of repurposing themselves into actually small studios, like mini studios, that then can use AI to put out sort of near studio content, very high quality, very automated, very cheap, and then everybody else, right? Everybody's a creative all the time, including, by the way, and we're seeing a lot of that, people with disabilities who could never be on set, who are legit creatives, who are, you know, directors
We have a
and
whole
writers.
panel on exactly that
Right.
in a couple hours, but yeah.
Who are using generative AI and sort of letting their creative voices out in a way that
Yeah.
they would never be able to do that because of their disability. So that's really cool. And then basically sort of every tier rolling into the next, right? So the stuff that really gets traction at the creative, the user-generated content level gets, you know, licensed by the mid-tier studios, and then if something gets really big, it gets licensed by the big studios. But we're seeing really the studio system moving into the direction of, you know, offering sort of a spend your life in Star Wars kind of experience across all formats. It's all personalized, it's all multi-platform. It all looks
But,
amazing.
and you're thinking this is technology created inside, say, Disney, which has the
Right.
Star Wars IP.
Right.
That would be their own
Correct. So I would
proprietary technology.
look at the Disney Epic Game relationship as the sort of the relationship that is very indicative of where the industry is going.
Interesting. I ask you the same question, sort of, where do you think you're going to get to in 12 months or 2 years from now, which is kind of a visible horizon, because
There's one aspect we haven't talked too much about that I know you're a little bit of a skeptic of, but I do believe in this democratization of creativity. I think we're seeing it from, you know, even from how now a producer or an on-air announcer who might not be a data scientist or engineer can now use natural language to interact with models to be able to ask questions of data, like really enriches that kind of storytelling. I think we're going to see that, and we see that with Tubi and a lot of like kind of the more emerging creatives that we're speaking to and working with about like who's telling the next stories of Hollywood and getting distributed on a platform like Tubi, maybe not, you know, theatrical, like many of the projects that Yves referring to, but, you know, maybe has like a more independent or smaller production, lower budget films, and we're just seeing kind of an explosion of opportunity there. I think it's super early days for this, but we're really bullish on, you know, how we can think about platforming that next generation of creative on a platform like Tubi, actually give them that, and then through AI to allow them to reach their audience and actually kind of make a living in Hollywood without necessarily, you know, needing to have that super top-down, you know, blessing or, you know, big
or system, which is
theatrical
what we've had.
Yeah,
Right?
so I
I mean,
think-
I'm thinking back to the time when YouTube, you know, was giving people space at their campus and just letting creators come in. And it really worked. Like people
Yeah.
came in and they started using YouTube as their platform because they basically gave them space and cameras and all of this stuff. So I could see that could also work if there's education about how to use AI tools, because we can't all learn how to do it on our own. Not we, but creative people. Right. But that could be extremely empowering.
That's exactly, I think, the example to build on. I think, and what the creatives we talk to now, it's like, yeah, they've had a home on YouTube or TikTok, but they have a long form story to tell, right? And so, can these tools actually allow them to be able to actually direct a movie, and to do so in a way that, you know, is within a budget that they can deliver on, and then we can give them that distribution or help with production. So I do think I think YouTube has pioneered a lot of this to show the possibility of democratizing tools and distribution for creatives. Like, what's that next level, and can we allow, like, you know, creatives to tell even more high ambition stories, essentially, through this.
One of the
these
things that's
tools.
interesting is sort of look back at sort of all of the ways that tech has colonized Hollywood in a way and tried to take over in some ways the content industry. You know, this came from a place of the tech companies wanting to be the storytellers themselves, and I think discovered over the course of 10 years or so that it's not that easy, that you can't just create this century-old culture of how you tell stories to a degree that audiences want to show up and stick with it for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And so the opposite happened. Apple started its own studios and is using kind of the traditional people from the industry. Same for Amazon. So I do think that special thing when you say content is king, like that ability to tell a story is something that's really unique. And, I think the question really is like, how do you continue to iterate and empower it without trying to like smother it?
Yes,
know?
exactly.
Right. What we're very, very excited about is we've told stories in a very formulaic way, and there's many, many, many more ways to tell stories. There's many, many more stories, many, many more characters and voices out there. If you bring the cost of production down, then you're lowering the risk. You're allowing more people to tell more different stories,
Right.
Using their voices, including minorities and stuff like that, and you're sort of opening up the playing field into what we think is going to be an explosion of creativity. And I think the next Star Wars will come out of UGC.
UGC? The next Star Wars will come out of UGC?
Yeah,
All right.
100%.
Okay,
I
you
mean,
heard it
we
here first.
want everyone in this room is serving creatives and serving the creative process. That's it, right? The only time I was almost fired at ETC is when I was building things that would really encroach on the creative process. I got in a lot of trouble. I don't know a single studio executive that
You can
isn't-
ask him about that at lunch if you want. But yeah.
I don't know a single studio executive that is hysterical about serving creatives. That's just all they do all day, every day.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much. This is so fascinating.
Sharon.
Melody, Yves, thank you for your time and for sharing.
you.